Good evening. It is Monday, January 8th, 2024. It is 6:20 in the evening. This is the Law and Ordinance Committee. I am Jeffrey Whidden. I'm joined tonight by Mrs. Marshall. We have two items on the agenda tonight. The first one is looking at adopting some amendments to Codified Ordinance 521-01. Mr. Austin Idemiller will be giving a presentation on this first one, I believe.
Hello. So yes, this is really adding one exemption for private swimming pools for a power safety cover. It would basically exempt the fence provisions around private swimming pools if they would have this safety cover that complies with ASTM F 1346.
All right, so this one kind of struck me this weekend, so I kind of dove into this one pretty deeply. I am, I didn't want to go against the international, what is it again?
Property Maintenance Code?
Yes, I'm sure they have done much more research than I possibly could. But it just strikes me as something that is perplexing as to why we would remove one barrier of safety for a different one and not just either leave as is or say, let's just do both to make it even more secure. So, I know this is a limited study here, but I have a swimming pool. I have a safety mesh that's currently on my pool right now for the winter. My 100-pound Labrador sinks up to her chest in it, so that's 2 feet of water. So I wouldn't necessarily say that would be something I would feel comfortable with leaving an unattended child. Obviously, doing my research, the number one thing for pool safety is an adult supervision at all time with children out there. My concern would be without a fence, if speaking for the neighborhoods we have in the city predominantly, with relative close proximity, my neighbor's there, I'm here, there's no fence in between us. I get out the pool at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm out there for a few hours, I go inside to make something to eat for a few minutes. There is no barrier to stop the child coming over to the pool. Am I going to then close the pool cover while I go inside for 5 minutes? I don't know if I would do that, or I don't know if everyone would do that. So it just seems, whereas you were reliant on someone leaving the pool area saying, I'm going to hit the switch now to turn the safety on, a fence is always on. It's never off. It's not foolproof, certainly by not, again, the number one thing would be always to have adult supervision for young children, because that's primarily what we're talking about here. It would be young children under 5 years old. So I could see, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at adding this on, saying, hey, we should do fences and this, but to say you don't need to have a fence, this is just fine, I found that a little bit much. Again, I know this is going against experts who are supposed to be looking into this, but that's where my head is at.
Well, I would say that, so first, we currently do have this exemption for hot tubs for the same safety cover. The 2024 edition of the IPMC added that to swimming pools as well. I would also say that a lot of insurance companies would still require the fence for cheaper insurance. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's still an incentive to have fencing. We're really just looking at making sure our ordinances do not conflict with the national standard.
Why would that conflict, though? I mean, yes, I know that it says it's something a little bit, just a tad different, but I mean.
Yeah. So the
what's it matter to us? I mean,
yeah. So the IPMC allows an exemption. Basically, says if you have a safety cover that complies with the ASTM F 1346. You do not need a barrier around the pool. Then we have another ordinance that says that you do have a barrier, so those two ordinances conflict with one another.
So, looking up ATSM 1346-F, that basically requires a cover. There are 2 different types. There is a mesh or permeable cover that if you were to walk on it, and you can walk on these tarps. I wouldn't do it, but I've seen them, you can. Water permeates through that, which is part of my concern. And then there are others that are non-permeable, solid. Think of if you were to walk on a water bed, the water would not come up through that. type of surface. So my concern is if we wanted to implement this, could we say, hey, you have to get the solid cover? You cannot use the permeable or mesh cover that allows water to rise through?
I would have to look at the specific provisions of the ASTM-F, and maybe we could add a exemption to that specific section of it. I'd have to take a look at that, though.
Okay. Mrs. Marsh, do you have any further questions?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think that it's a little risky.
Do any other council members have any questions?
I do.
Mr. Phillips?
Well, quite honestly, Mr. Chair, I agree with you in that the barrier or fences that are commonly used here are 24/7, 365 protection, and the power covers that they're talking about here are only as good as the owner when they're in the pool. And the daytime example that you gave is outstanding, and it addresses where my concerns are also. So, quite honestly, I mean, as this is written at the moment, I'm not going to support it. So that's where I'm at with it. There you have it.
Do any other council members have any questions? Mr. Schilling?
Jeff Schilling, 591 Chartwell Court. Troy, I agree with Mr. Phillips. I think, you know, my daughter owns a pool. It's fenced in. They do have a cover for it. But again, it's, you know, how many people are going to, even at the end of the day, say, okay, I'm going to put that cover back. I mean, middle of summer, I'll leave the cover off. What difference does it make, you know? And so I would think there's, you know, I'd like to see the fencing, and if they want to put the cover on to keep the pool clean, that's one thing. But like I said, I just see it. There's possibilities for some problems with that just by itself. So I wouldn't support it either. I don't think at this particular point.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, there is no absolute 100% guarantee, even with a fence, that accidents or the most unfortunate result that we're talking about here would occur with a fence or with this cover or not. However, in the event of someone not being home on a vacation or some other circumstances and in attendance or even inattentiveness, I think that the fence thing is still needing to be in our rules. So, that's it.
Mr. Sievert?
Todd Sievert, council member at large, 148 Mary Robin. This might be more of a grant question, but I'm a little concerned, or I guess I'm not concerned. I have a question. We want to comply with the maintenance code, but I think we can also extend beyond that by requiring all pools to be fenced. And so I think we're all on the maybe on the same page. We want to make sure that we're compliant with what the manual, for lack of a better term, would be, that we've incorporated that language in there. But I think what I'm hearing and what, as a pool owner, I would have concern with too, especially under the attractive nuisance doctrines and some of the other issues, is that it's the position of council at this time that if we add this language in, that we want to make sure that we still require fences around all pools. And I think that's kind of the consensus. And I don't know if those are contradictory or complementary issues that might be better resolved by grant. So I agree with you, Mr. Phillips. I think we should vet this out a little bit, make sure that we're protecting our citizens from the attractive nuisances of pools, as well as complying with what is required by the appropriate manuals and what was it called, the International Property Maintenance Code. So I don't know how compliant we have to be with the International Property Maintenance Code, and that's a question I think Mr. Kerber should tell us. But I don't think anybody wants to eliminate fences, from what I know. And as a pool owner, I do not want to either. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Titterington.
So just in response, what Mr. Kerber would tell you is that if we adopt the IPMC version 2024, which is your next item, those would be considered the minimum requirements that we would follow. So we can certainly do something more restrictive if council so desires. We would have to make sure that when the final legislation goes through, that we are not losing that additional layer that you want to keep.
Okay.
And Mr. Kerber would craft the legislation that way.
So, I'm not sure if it would be your recommendation, but you would think that by passing this tonight, taking it to council, that we can still add that language in when we brought it to council?
Yeah. I think the procedurally, you would make a negative recommendation to the council, which then informs the next item, and so we would make sure that that legislation adequately reflects that the fence requirement remains in the code, in our code.
Okay. Before we move to vote, does anyone else in the audience have any questions on this particular item? Mrs. Marshall, would you?
So we're moving forward with it tonight only to get it to council to make them,
No, we would.
You're making a negative recommendation.
okay, so then you have the negative.
Yes, I would also vote no for this particular measure tonight, as currently stated. Next up on the agenda, Austin, will you be given the next item up? We will be looking at adopting the International Property Maintenance Code, a little bit broader sweeping amendments today, but maybe I'll let you explain those in more detail.
Yeah, so this one should be a lot easier than the last one. So we're adopting the 2024 edition. We did this back in 2022 for the 2021 version. So trying to stay on top of the newest editions as they come out every 2 years. Really just more reorganization throughout the code. They've streamlined some processes, made the language that we follow cleaner, easier for the public to read. And that's really all they've done with this update. We're also looking at enacting 52198, which is an appeals section. This is actually for the safety, sanitation, and health section of our codified ordinance, but it's actually adding an appeals for that. And then lastly, we're really fixing a typo on the 130799, which is the penalty section. That's really all I have for you.
Mrs. Marshall, do you have any questions?
No.
Do any council members have any questions? Mr. Phillips?
Just to the point of the Property Maintenance Code 303, in this particular item addressed with this committee meeting, just noting that is being looked at for an exception and not, I don't know how the wording of that, we're not adopting that portion at this moment. We're not accepting that. Council hopefully will eventually not accept 303.
You're referring to the swimming pool covers it?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. That section in there. So
Gotcha.
It's stated again in the...
Yeah, when we get to the actual legislation, that's where we would
got it.
remove that
Okay.
portion of the language.
All right. Thank you.
Do any other council members have any questions? Mrs. Marshall, what is your pleasure?
Okay, I'm fine with that one.
I agree, we can move forward on that one. Is there anything else to come before the Law and Ordinance Committee tonight?
No, sir.
We are adjourned, thank you.